Harper Lee's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel To Kill a Mockingbird has sold more than 40 million copies worldwide, was voted the #1 book you must read before you die by British librarians in 2006, and was voted America's best-loved novel in the Great American Read in 2018. Its protagonist, Atticus Finch, was voted the #1 greatest film hero of all time by the American Film Institute in 2003, and was voted most inspiring character in literature in Great Britain in 2016. As portrayed by Gregory Peck, the image of Atticus Finch is indelibly etched in American popular culture. For his portrayal of Atticus Finch, Peck was awarded the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1963, and Horton Foote won the Oscar for Best Screenplay. However, the movie did not win the Best Movie Oscar. That award went to Lawrence of Arabia. Atticus is the hero because he embodies the virtues defined in the first legal code of ethics, inspired by Pennsylvania lawyer George Sharswood. Despite the condemnation of his small-town Alabama community, Atticus zealously represents Tom Robinson, an African-American man accused of rape. However, Atticus has been the subject of criticism. One critic, law professor Monroe Friedman, points out that, despite being a state legislator, Atticus does nothing to dismantle the racist system that condemns Robinson to death. Could he not, asked Friedman, introduce one bill to mitigate the evils of segregation? A second critic, law professor Stephen Lubet, points out that Atticus's cross-examination of the alleged rape victim, Mayella Ewell, was disrespectful. Despite a patina of courtesy, Atticus deploys subtle menace when he promises Mayella, "I won't try to scare you for a while, not yet." Lubet criticizes Atticus for his theory of the case. Mayella is a sexually frustrated, love-starved aggressor who lies her way out of a dilemma and participates in a judicial lynching in order to avoid revealing the truth. Atticus merely asked the jury to substitute one of their prejudices for another. But the most searing criticism came from intellectual provocateur Malcolm Gladwell in a 2009 New Yorker article, The Courthouse Ring, Atticus Finch and the Limits of Southern Liberalism. According to Gladwell, Atticus is not a civil rights hero because he favors accommodation, not reform. Gladwell accuses Atticus of hypocrisy because, despite his high-minded principles, he goes along with Sheriff Heck Tate's plan to explain Bob Ewell's murder by saying that he fell on his own knife, rather than admitting that Ewell was killed by Boo Radley to protect the children. Gladwell also criticizes Atticus for telling Scout that it's not okay to hate anyone, not even Hitler. Really? Gladwell asks. Not even Hitler? He mocks Atticus for thinking that changing the hearts and minds of people can change society. Atticus offers no suggestions for legal or structural reform. When asked about the Ku Klux Klan's having threatened shopkeeper Sam Levy, Atticus tells Scout that Levy shamed them and they slunk away. Recalling the lynching of Leo Frank in Atlanta, Gladwell mocks Atticus for wanting to believe in the fantasy of Sam Levy down the street, giving the Klan a good scolding. Even Atticus's stand against the lynch mob is not heroic to Gladwell. He mocks Atticus's assertion that its leader, Walter Cunningham, is basically a good man who just has a few blind spots along with the rest of us. But Gladwell points out that Cunningham's blind spot is a homicidal hatred of black people. Finally, Gladwell criticizes one of the scenes that celebrates Atticus's heroism. Commenting on Atticus's walk down the courthouse aisle after the guilty verdict, Gladwell notes, if Finch were a civil rights hero, he would be brimming with rage at the unjust verdict, but he isn't. Gladwell compares Atticus unfavorably with a true civil rights hero. He's not Thurgood Marshall looking for racial salvation through the law. Instead, he is a good old boy, a member of the courthouse ring, whose zealous defense of Tom Robinson does little to disrupt the status quo. Unfortunately for Atticus's status as a hero, in 2015, Harper Lee's first novel, Go Set a Watchman, was published. Here, we see Atticus more than 20 years later, a member of Macomb's White Citizens Council and a staunch opponent of desegregation. Worse, he no longer offers a zealous defense for his client. Now 72 years old, Atticus has taken on an associate, Hank Clinton. The Finch's retired housekeeper, Calpurnia, calls on Hank to seek help for her grandson, Frank. Frank, driving drunk, has hit and killed a white pedestrian. The odds are stacked against him, but Hank turns down the case, leading Atticus to scold him. "You shouldn't have done that, Hank. Of course we'll take it. I suspect when we know all the facts in the case, the best that can be done for the boy is for him to plead guilty." Now, isn't it better for us to stand up with him in court than to have him fall into the wrong hands? The NAACP paid lawyers are standing around like buzzards down here, waiting for things like this to happen. Atticus asks rhetorically, can you blame the South for resenting being told what to do about its own people by people who have no idea of its daily problems? Atticus prefers the 9 old men of the 1930s who had little use for the jury reforms demanded by the NAACP, whose activities are described by Atticus. They subpoena the jury commissioners, they ask the judge to step down, they raise every legal trick in the book. So, Gladwell was right after all. Atticus Finch can defend a single African American against a powerless white woman. But when African Americans take collective action to challenge the legal system, he caves. He sacrifices the best interest of his young African American client to his vision of an embattled Jim Crow South fighting for its life.